ad testing. So you've been talking to your team about that this week. How's that been going?
Yeah, it's a big one. I'm thinking about it a lot because we just took over an account that they had a pretty reputable agency managing their ads. But when we got in there, and one of the reasons they brought us on was because their creative team was delivering a ton of assets every week, but those assets weren't getting spent. And there wasn't like a proper feedback loop to the creative team to really inform them on, hey, what's doing well? What isn't doing well? Why are certain things working? And the performance account performance actually was pretty decent. Like it looked good. Like they didn't bring us on because they needed to improve performance, but they were investing a lot of money in creative that wasn't getting spent, it wasn't getting tested. There wasn't accountability on, what are you doing with these assets once we deliver them. And honestly, this conversation comes up a lot with clients of like, what's the best way to test? There's a few different theories of thought out there of like, all right, just throw them all in a bid cap campaign, let Meta decide. Another one is, hey, throw them in an ABO, give them dedicated spend, let them heat up. Others are more granular, like set it up in an A/B test. There's also some new features with Meta that allow you to test creative in an ASC and give it spend. So there's no right answer. That's what I've come to learn. There's no right answer on how to do it. Of course, we have some formats that we prefer, but it really depends on a number of factors and ultimately the brand before you can dive in and find the winning stuff.
I was hoping you'd say there's a golden ticket. Like, I've tried them all, and this is the way to do it. But I guess you're finding that it depends on the brand, depends on the account.
Yeah, it depends on the volume of spend, the amount of, testing budget they have, depends on the AOV, the CAC target, like a number of things. Cause like, for instance, I think the hardest brands to test creative for are the ones with higher AOV, 800 to $1,000 AOVs. Like that's really hard to get ads through learning and get enough engagement on those ads to be statistically significant, to scale.
Makes
Um,
so much sense. It's so much different than a $35 product where, you're getting a $10 cost per purchase versus a $250 cost per purchase. They're just different worlds.
Exactly. And then the other factor we notice is like, all right, what's the attribution settings on the account? Like, what's the standard? If
Interesting.
it's if it's 7-day click, 1-day view, then obviously you get a lot of view attribution, which can be good in regards to giving the account signal. But then if they're weighing that against an MTA, like, which is their source of truth, what do you use for your guidelines and specifically for testing? So a good example, one account on the scale campaigns, we have 7-day click, and then on the creative testing, we actually do 7-day click, 1-day view. And the idea is just to get it in front of let it optimize to people that are stopping, that are looking at the ad, get it engagement, and then move it to the click campaign.
So when
Um,
you this might go back to our last conversation where we're talking about I think we talked about thumb stop ratio. Is that a metric that you're looking at when you have view attribution settings turned on?
It is, yeah. And something we'll look at is those preliminary metrics like thumb stop rate, add to cart rate, especially with the high AOV brands. We're not always looking at like, oh, it's got, 50 conversions. We can move it into our scale campaign. We'll look at some of the leading indicators. Okay, maybe it doesn't have any sales tag to it, but it does have a lot of add to carts. We do know that the traffic coming from this ad is driving site engagement. So that's on a brand we sell $2,000 to $3,000 product depending on what kind of offer they're running.
Wow.
When we launch new ads for that, very rarely will we get stat sig on the testing ads.
Sure.
um, and even then, like, Meta will attribute certain sales to certain ads in that ad set, but in my opinion, it's like throwing a dart at a moving dartboard, a spinning dartboard. It's
Yeah.
like that's Meta's best guess at what ad drove that click. So we'll weigh a number of metrics when trying to decide like, all right, is this ad actually driving sales and site engagement? We'll look at like, add to carts are a good one in that factor. But
For something like that, it sounds like you need just a little bit of common sense too. Like $1,000 product is not the same purchasing cycle as a $35 product. So you need an MTA. You can't be looking at view stats and then attribute it to a $3,000 purchase.
exactly, especially on the testing side, like, but that's where you have to weigh it because like the MTA is generally looking at last click. Like this brand is using Tableau last click, which we've talked about a number of times isn't the best way to really measure the
For sure.
impact of your performance. So in that scenario, actually often go with like, all right, what's the algorithm actually liking? We might not have the data on the MTA to show that this ad is converting, but we do know that, there's a high scroll stop, there's a high click-through rate, there's a high add to cart rate. All the leading indicators are in line that if we were to put this into a scale campaign and get it some more money, then it's likely going to convert.
Yeah, yeah. And that's where those custom metrics are so important, because if you're just using the cookie cutter performance dashboard that Meta gives you, you're missing all these leading indicators, because I think the Meta dashboard is still pretty much designed for last click in terms of observing performance.
Yeah, or at least looking at what Meta wants to quote, show that it is driving the most performance, meaning skewing to ads that obviously have a lot of user appeal on platform, which is good, but at the same time, they don't always convert. So for instance, like you might see like image ads on platform drive a ton of, sales and a high ROAS
Yeah,
conversion rate. But like when you qualify that against an MTA that's doing maybe North Beam like an accrual basis, you're actually going to show that like, oh, that image ad, yes, it did convert on the last part of that user journey, but really it was the video ad that maybe drove that top of funnel engagement. So the North Beam accrual model is going to apply that revenue to the ad that had more influence in the sales journey.
right, right. Yeah, that makes sense. And that goes back to a couple weeks ago. We were talking about, you had an account that had a billing issue and their ads turned off, and then their MER
Mhm.
looked great the next week. But 2 weeks later, you turn the ads back on and it looks like everything tanked. Well, it's just because there's that 7-day delay between the time someone discovers the brand and they make their first purchase.
Exactly. It's like that sign, that sine wave,
Yeah,
catching up to when the spend actually influenced the customer versus when the sale occurs.
for sure. For sure. Since we've been talking more about MTA, multi touch attribution, I've been paying a lot more attention to it. And I've noticed when it, on my on the mobile app world, we put a ton of time into our email autoresponders and improved them significantly. And since doing that, now what used to be like a 3-day, 1, 2, 3 email is now spread out over 14 days. And now when we have slow days on social, the downloads and revenue are still catching up because we have all of this recapturing ability in email. So it's not the same thing, but it's kind of like building out your sales cycle on the back end, or building out all these retargeting assets is not the point where the customer is coming in, even though it could be attributed to the point of conversion.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that brings up another point of how important it is to have email and SMS and quote CRM really dialed in if you're running paid. Like, and this kind of speaks to another one that's not CRM related, but reminder ads. I think of that because we've been starting to run reminder ads for new product launches and even upcoming promotions. And what we noticed, we did a study with Meta on, very large campaign and running both reminder ads leading up to it and an add to cart campaign on top of it. We found that users who were exposed to reminder ads pre-sale were 25% more likely to purchase during the sale. So essentially we're getting a 25% lift on those users. And what's great is that reminder campaign was targeting specifically new customers. We were excluding anybody that was already in the list,
Interesting.
um, and seeing a huge lift with it. And if you think about it with reminder ads, let's say you're getting a cost per reminder of like $1. However, with reminder ads, you're getting a push notification the day before the event that, whether the sale or whatever, you're getting a push notification the day of and the day after. So you're
Wow.
basically getting 3 push notifications that maybe you paid for $1 for, but that's really only 33 cents push notification,
Right.
which that's one of the like, you know, everybody's going to start doing it. The hard part is it's hard to measure. So a lot of response marketers probably won't be able to convince their their clients to do it. But if you have the budget and you're able to run it on top of your BAU, I'm seeing this crush right now for sales because it's an engagement objective that's getting into these new bid pools that isn't necessarily in that conversion bid pool, and you're getting a lower cost on that impression, lower cost on that engagement, lower cost on ultimately that customer, and you're getting a premium. And you're basically Meta's allowed you to buy push notifications, which is incredible because it's like a text message or email or any
Yeah.
of those other features.
To get them to sign up to a list or like submit their email, it's just native in Meta.
Exactly, native in Instagram. So
Unbelievable.
yeah, I've been using it for live events, which I found to be really effective for selling tickets, where you have these marketing campaigns that are geared towards this one big day that's the goal. But it's also working for promo campaigns or, we're going to use it for, Labor Day, Black Friday, like any of the big holidays that are coming up, we'll be running reminder campaigns leading up to it.
That's so interesting. You're gonna have to show me how to set that up one time. I'm very curious.
Yeah, it's great. Like a good example is a new product releases maybe in 2 weeks. 5 days before that, run an engagement campaign that's targeting reminders for when that product comes out, and then just do a super simple static ad or an animated GIF like that just says coming soon, announcing the product, the date, and then remind me as the CTA. Crushes. Run that for 5 days leading up to that, and you're going to see a lift on day one of that sale.
The really interesting part about that to me is if it's $1 per reminder and you're getting a 25% lift, unless your product is $5, it's a really profitable campaign to run.
Exactly. Yep. And it doesn't measure directly. That's what's crazy is like, this lift was measured through advanced analytics, which is it really, you know, kind of a specialized like form of measurement with Meta. Like most folks don't have access to it, but
Yeah.
like the concept is like, oh, we were able to qualify it on that account. We can't directly measure on a lot of these other accounts, but there's various tactics that we can deploy as we start to roll this out that are going to show that spend is justified and that incremental audience lift is actually way more impactful than we might just be able to measure through a one-dimensional view on Ads Manager.
See, that right there is what's going to separate the really good media buyers from the people that are stuck in the past. You're not looking at measurable attribution. You're looking at overall reach and exposure, and you're looking at not just MER, but total cash collected. You're
Exactly.
letting go of the, I don't want to say vanity metrics because ROAS is not a vanity metric, but you can get stuck in the same retargeting pool so easily if you're only focused on like final touch attribution.
Exactly. And a lot of performance marketers, like they they don't have the fundamentals of marketing or the basics to really look at a long timeline and
Because
to
you didn't
really
need it in the early days
understand
of
brand.
this. It was just like run
Ex-
up a meta ad, like scale the campaign, creative's working, and that's all you needed.
exactly. Like I saw somebody's LinkedIn post the other day. I forget who it was, but it was like spot on like, hey, like performance marketers are missing this, without saying brand directly, but this, he alluded to the concept of brand, the concept of time, the concept of building a marketing strategy that's long-winded, that isn't just designed to just gimmick, have a gimmick and hack a conversion based on some performance data.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about this before, but I've sat through calls with performance video agencies that spend, you know, brands will spend millions of dollars on ads, that both developing ads, paying for performance, performance compensation on ad, and the actual ad spend itself, like on these ads that at the end of the day, you think about it, you're like, people actually don't want to see this. There's a very small pocket of people on Meta that are in market, ready to buy, that maybe need that product, that do want to see that ad.
Hmm.
But like, why are we investing so many resources on ads that like most people that are just passing their time on Meta are just going to try to scroll by, or on Instagram are just trying to scroll by, and they're actually annoyed by that ad. Like, what if we spent a fraction of that budget to creating something that is memorable, that has a sticky factor, that pulls on the heartstrings, that actually provides value for the user, that may not drive a conversion right away, but it's going to have a sticky factor or shareability, and it's going to create discussion.
Hmm.
It's funny, we're controversy, right? Going back to Sydney Sweeney, it's like the
I knew
latest.
that.
I know, right? It's like it's again, like whatever you think about it, it's part of the conversation, And American Eagle is obviously their share price is up. They did like 300 million in one
They're
day.
back, baby. About American Eagle up until the Sydney Sweetie campaign came out, and the fact that
Ex-
they took such a hard stance against this like woke reaction to it makes it even better. Because if they
Exactly.
I almost think it was on purpose. If they
Yeah.
hadn't apologized and said like, "Oh, you're right. Sorry. We should have been more inclusive." Everything would have failed. People on both sides would have hated them. But the fact that they took
Yeah.
such a hard right stance, I think just made it so
Yeah.
much better.
And they know their customer. They know, it's like it's bold marketing. Bold is what's standing out. I had a call the other day with the founder of Under Armour, and he consults on a number of brands. We work with him on a couple projects, and like that's the one thing. If there's one thing I took away from the call, it was like what's working right now is bold marketing. People that are going to take a stand, brands that are going to stand, have a message, stand up for it, but also like going to think outside of the box and are going to do something disruptive. Even though we kind of hate the word disruptive because it's overused, but that concept of like being bold, loud, audacious, something that's memorable, that's not just like some hacked, 3-second hook to try to get you to, buy and convert on an ad instantly, but no, something that's going to get the population talking.
Right.
Um, it's like that's the marketing that sticks, and performance marketers really, a lot of them don't understand that because we're stuck in the 1-day ROAS. We're stuck in the like immediate response, and I think brand owners get stuck in this too. I have founders that they're operating 9-figure brands, and they're literally still hitting the refresh button on Shopify like on a daily basis,
Yeah.
on an hourly basis, and then you know and granted, like that's one of the beauties of performance marketing is we do have this fast feedback loop. We can see our direct impact on the business, but like sometimes it's like, folks, just chill, like build a campaign, let the strategy go, and like don't don't think that like the decision this hour is going to affect our results the next hour.
For sure. For
It
sure.
doesn't it doesn't always work that way at that scale.
I've seen a brand owner do that. He was doing between like 8 to 10 million a year and trying to grow as quickly as he can. And he had the Shopify widget on his home screen. And he would look at it, and I was sitting down with him talking to him, and he goes, "I can just feel how the day's going to go based on how the first 2 hours of the day are." And that's generally true. I actually do agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
But the flip side is that you're only focused on the revenue you bring in today. You're like living inside of Ads Manager,
Mm-hmm.
looking at the revenue in Shopify, but it's not giving you that long-term view.
Exactly. And it's like the caveat is like that's not necessarily bad, right? Like there's, for instance, one of the largest brands we work with, they have a data analyst that can forecast the day's revenue, months in advance sometimes. But we'll
Interesting.
look at what that actual day is pacing to, and 10 a.m. rolls around, and we'll know what that day. That's great. It's great data to have, but is that going to affect the decisions that you make fundamentally that day and how to like there can be scenarios where you do make pivots on spend and you do adjust things and there's a element to that that's good, but like candidly when I launch new campaigns a lot of times I intentionally I'll go back, I'll check it, I'll make sure everything's working like once it's firing, but I don't try to go weigh performance decisions for at least 3 to 5 days. Like I go and I put that thing in the oven and I intentionally try not to go back to it. And because I've trained myself over the years of like, oh, a junior marketer is going to go back. They're going to second guess. They're going to they're going to think they need to turn this thing off or adjust this budget or bid cap it, da, 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 and they're going to start tinkering. And it actually is going to hinder that campaign's performance. It's literally like checking a cake before it's ready.
Right.
If you go in and you start tasting it and you're opening the oven, you're messing with the heat, like it just totally ruins the recipe. So I think that's the other factor is like, you have to, especially for new campaigns, you have to put it into the auction and you have to give it time. So sometimes it's better not to look at it every day.
That would be a good reverse sales tactic because in my early days, I used to say, some media buyers, they'll look at the account once a week. I'm like, we're in it every 2 days. Like, we make changes frequently, but that's definitely not the way to go about it. Maybe it worked way back when, but it's definitely not the way to approach it today.
Yeah, I think it's hard also convincing clients like that you don't want to do that now. Like they'll
Yeah. Yeah, of
they'll go
course.
in and they'll be like, this ad spent $300 in the last like 4 days and has one sale and da 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 da. And you're like, yes,
And the
because
problem is that
that's what
pressures you to make a decision as the media buyer. You're like, okay, maybe I should turn it off. Like they're not happy. You do what you can to please the client. They're ultimately the ones steering the ship. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's I guess your job is to see the forest for the trees and zoom out and look at how the overall campaign is going to perform and not just make micro decisions.
exactly. And see what the client's not seeing, and then try to communicate that
Yeah.
as best as possible back to them.
You said
Um,
something a couple weeks ago. You said people don't go on Instagram to connect with their friends. They go there to be entertained. And I think that's why bold marketing is so effective right now because it's entertaining. And especially in the US right now, if it's politically polarizing, you're going to get a lot of people to talk about it. And I think that's
mhm.
probably why you see the Sydney Sweeney campaign working so well. Did you have any other conversations with the founder of Under Armour about that?
Not specifically on that topic. Well, it was more related to a famous personality that we both work with, that, kind of thinking on how he can build awareness going into Q4 for his brand, his e-commerce brand. But what's interesting is kind of on that note, like, not to get political, but to get political, is I remember in 2015, 2016, during that election cycle when Trump was just coming on the scene as a political candidate. And I was living in Boston, which obviously we know the political climate there. I was working as wait staff in college, kind of waiting tables for all of these different events around the city. They're mostly like these nice, either political dinners or private parties or fundraising events or, university fellowship dinners. Like, it was basically wait staff for this private catering company. And I got to overhear a ton of very interesting conversations at these sort of elite dinners. And one thing that really blew my mind, it was at least one of these dinners, every single time there was at least one table, sometimes more, talking about Trump. And it
Interesting.
wasn't positive, but it was like, there is a discussion happening about this guy everywhere I go, every single table. And I realized, I was like, oh, that's what marketing is. It's like, it doesn't matter that they don't like him, that, they're not going to like drink the Kool-Aid, but at the same time, like, he's having the things that he's doing are creating impact. That's creating conversation. It's creating awareness. And it's like, that's marketing. And
Definitely.
I remember that whole season, literally every dinner I would work at, the conversation would steer towards Trump.
Yeah.
And I was just a fly on the wall in a lot of these rooms, but it was really interesting to me how someone or something can have an impact like that and create conversation, whether negative or positive. It's still conversation. It's kind of like the old adage, like, any PR is good PR. It's that
Yeah.
same formula. Yeah. Yeah. And so I guess the question is, like, how do you apply that in a performance marketing world? When
Yeah, and
we're
how do you insert your brand into conversations? It was like the founder of what was his name? Dr. Squash, Mr. Squash,
Dr. Squash.
Dr. Squash.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Chiming in on the oh my gosh, sorry, all the names are escaping me. We talked about it a few weeks ago.
Oh, it was the Liver King thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So
yeah.
he inserted himself into something that's culturally relevant,
Yeah,
and
not
his
Dr.
brand
Squash.
got
It
a big
was
lift
Santa
because
Cruz Medicinals. Yeah.
right, that was the one. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, things like that. Like, where's the like focus of society for that moment? It's almost like a spotlight, and that spotlight's moving around to these different things. Like, the corporate attention is moving around these different topics, and
Yeah,
it's like, all right, where's it at this moment? And then how do you jump into it? Which sounds so sleazy as a marketer.
it does, but
But, like, how
you
do you
know,
do
if
it in
you're
a
coming from it, I'm sorry.
authentic? Oh, no, I was just gonna say, how do you do it in an authentic way?
Right, yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. If you come at it from a place of authenticity and you are genuine about your opinions, then, there's no problem that you're benefiting from the controversy. I noticed this actually the other day is that because a lot of the content that I post in the mobile app world is related to parenting and, like, how do you put your child to sleep and when do you give them food? And, new parents always have an opinion on it, which is interesting. And if you take a hard stance, we'll get a lot of backlash in the comments, but we'll get even more people defending us from the people that commented negatively. So it kind of, in a way, when you talk about something controversial, it builds a stronger relationship between you and your customers because you're taking a hard stance together on a topic that you believe in, and you're arguing in the comments against the negativity that you're getting. And I see this with a lot of brands as things that are intentionally polarizing for the purposes of being able to stand with your customers and fight back for the opinion that you value.
Yeah, really well said. Because that it reminds me of a hack I heard, a pet brand use once, where they're running ads with a corgi, for instance, in the ad, and someone jumps in, probably from the team, jumps in and says, "Oh, that pet food, that dog food looks really good, but I sure do hate corgis," And then someone else jumps in and says, "Are you crazy? Corgis are the best dogs ever. This guy's nuts," and it intentionally starting an argument about like the best dog breeds on the comments of the ad, and then that ad getting a ton of visibility, shares, likes, low CPMs because of this polarizing, conversation that's happening in the comments.
Totally.
But it's like it really that, for a while Instagram was optimizing for connection, for conversation, so that was something that you could really lean on. I think it still does that. The first place people go on Reels is like the comments to see what the public consensus is on certain issues.
Yep.
But yeah, there's a lot to be had there. I think the Gary Vee used to talk about this a lot. There's just like that's where social media lives. It's in the comment section.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very true. It's very true. And I think you said something important, which is that's the public opinion. And the reason that's so true is because only one person posted the video, but everybody has the ability to chime in and like leave their opinion on it. So that's why, I mean, that sounds obvious now that I say it out loud, but that's why it is so relevant.
For sure. Yeah, it's interesting. It's that's where social media now as we know it exists.
You're
Is
right. Yeah. It's not
it's
just
in the
going on
concept.
Instagram to see what your friends posted. It's like engaging in topics that you're interested in the comment section of popular videos.
Yeah, exactly.
Very interesting. I spoke with the brand owner, and he used to say all the time, he's like, we sell in the comments. And they would do that. They would either post something controversial intentionally, or what I've also seen is getting reviews. You ask your customers not to leave a review on the product, but to leave a comment. Just say comment
Hmm.
about your experience. Because for them, it's all the same. They'll screenshot it and use it in their material. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that it's all on Google or it's all on like the Shopify reviews tab. If it's on social media, it almost gives more validity to the product than if you like have a review app on Shopify, for instance.
It really does. It's because a review app on Shopify can be curated. So like
100%. And people know that.
comments can't. Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if there's an app out there that can actually like take your reviews or make it easy for people to comment on ads as a review. For instance, like once they get the product, like feed them back to the ad that they bought it from or whatever and get a review or like populate comments with reviews instead of populating Shopify.
That's a good idea. That's a really good idea. There's an app idea
Wouldn't
right there.
wouldn't that be interesting?
Yeah. I think it'd be relevant.
Yeah.
It'd be really relevant. I mean, I do that now. I take screenshots when we get positive comments or positive DMs
Hmm.
because it's way more powerful than a review on the app.
Meta should really build functionality for that because like with the ways that they're pushing catalog and catalog is how the machine learning models are learning who wants what products, like you can attach you should be able to attach reviews back to that ad, not necessarily that product, but back to that ad as it's associated with that product,
Mhm.
like through Yotpo or whatever,
Yeah,
whatever Shopify
that's
you're
a really
using.
good idea
Like Instagram could literally just post the review back to the ad as a comment.
for sure. Yep. That's a really
Cool.
good idea. You listening, Zuck?
Know
That's a
what
good
I'm
one.
talking to our reps about today.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Cool.
Cool.
Well, I think that probably wraps it up. That was a really interesting conversation.
Cool. Likewise. Good chatting with you as always.
Yeah, appreciate your time. Thanks, Andrew.
Likewise.